Welcome back to the Rags to Races podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Jake. I'd like to apologize for the late release this week. I had a little Skype issue and a recording issue, but I was able to redo the interview, and our guests tonight were very, very gracious in that, letting me redo the interview with them. So without further ado, here's episode 2 of 3 on autocrossing with the guys from the 10/10ths podcast. We've got Adam Nielsen, Robbie Vierhout, and Michael Beck. Okay, welcome back to the Rags to Races podcast. Tonight I've got 3 guests via Skype. I've got Michael Beck, Adam Nielsen, and Rob Sponsibilities himself, Robbie Vierhout from the 10/10ths podcast. How you guys doing?
Sponsibilities.
Well, I was doing really good until you went with Rob's Sponsibilities, but we'll make it work.
Well, you don't drive a Mini Cooper. This isn't the Italian Job. You can't be handsome, Rob. I'm sorry.
Ooh.
Heyo.
Being called out.
You need an Aston Martin. You have no choice.
Need to do more jack stuff. Be huge like Jason Statham. Then you could be handsome.
No, he's
Rob.
not huge. He's cut.
He's jack, dude.
Now,
Be jacked.
that being said, if he got an Aston Martin, got into a high-speed chase, and flipped the bird to the news camera in the helicopter, then by all means, you've earned the name Handsome Rob.
Here's the deal. If you get an Aston Martin, Robbie, I will let you be Handsome Rob. 100%. 100% of the time. No other mean nicknames.
You heard it. No fine print. You heard it.
No other mean nicknames.
I'll even add on a slightly easier attainable thing. A Mini Cooper as a replacement to the Aston Martin would be acceptable because then you'd have a daily driver I like.
There you go.
See what this week brings.
All right, so we're here actually to talk about autocross. Originally, what I had, my original plan was to just do one show involving autocross. And the more I talked to people, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed more input from people in different parts of the country to talk about autocross because it is so important at the grassroots level and if you are just trying to get involved. And it's a very easy, cost-effective way to get your start in motorsports. How did you guys get into autocross?
Well, so this is Adam, by the way. Let's see. I got into autocross. I had my daily driver at the time was a 2001 Audi TT Quattro, and we, unfortunately, it is no longer a place that we're allowed to race. But we used to race at this little abandoned, about half-mile long go-kart track, and it was only big enough for a car at a time, so it was considered autocross. And a friend of mine raced there quite regularly, and a couple of us decided, oh, let's go with him, and so that's kind of where the bug bit, and then I kind of moved into the cone stuff shortly thereafter. So
Yeah, I actually started it at Marshalltown too. Sorry, I'm fighting off a cold.
I think we all three did,
yeah.
actually.
And so I was always into muscle cars when I was younger. My dad and I restored a 79 Camaro, which I still have. Started doing that when I was 13. And so we kind of always did stuff with muscle cars, but I was getting a little bit bored with that because there's almost only so much you can do with that. It's just mainly working on your car and taking it to shows. And I wanted to do something different, and I learned about autocross through, I'm not sure who it was, if I just saw it on the internet or what, and decided I wanted to do it. So instead of doing the reasonable thing and buying a Civic, I decided to buy a 74 Fiat 124 that came in boxes, quite literally, brakes on it, and everything else that came with the car was in a box. And we put it together actually in 6 weeks. Took it to, pretty sure the first race I went to was at Marshalltown at that little go-kart track. And then, yeah, from there we just kind of kept hammering away at it. It was fun. It was a nice transition from, not doing much performance-oriented with cars because, mainly doing street things and shows to getting a chance to actually kind of test the performance limits of a car where the risk is pretty low and the cost is pretty low.
In high school, I bought a 95 Nissan 240 SX, and I was big into the show car thing and the Fast and Furious thing at the time, which we actually just did a podcast about, am I a racer or not? But we're not going to go there.
Turns out Robbie's a racer.
Turns out I'm a racer. But so I bought that car, and I basically just did all show stuff with it, and kind of the same thing with Michael, where he was doing hot rod things, and working on your car and then going to a show. It's cool for like 2 shows, and then you're sick of it, and you're ready to do something else. And I always kind of had aspirations to turn into some sort of a race car, and I wanted to be racing, and I had no clue how to make that happen. And then when I was going to Iowa State, Adam was living in Ames at the time, and we kind of bumped into each other again because we knew each other in high school. And he goes, you should take that racing with us. And I kind of didn't really think about it for a while and didn't really do it. And finally one day, he convinced me to go. And I've been hooked ever since. I've been trying to make it to every single one I can where the car's actually running.
Awesome. Yeah, I know how that goes. My current car is in a state of disrepair, and it's not running at all at the moment. So I feel you there. I did get it got a little bit chopped up here. Who was the one that had the Fiat again for the
Michael.
audience? Okay. Kind of
Yep.
cut up. So instead of buying a Civic, you bought a Fiat in boxes.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to anybody that has a Miata, but I just didn't want a Miata because I'm weird, I guess. I tend to like unusual things, and so we had a Fiat that we had pulled out of a field for free, which tells you how much the cars are worth, when I was real young, when I was, I don't know how, probably 12 years old or something like that. And same deal, we kind of put it back together, and I actually learned how to drive a manual on, I think it would have been an 80 Fiat Spider. And I got the bug after we owned that car and then ended up selling it. So when we came to address this autocross situation of what car are we going to buy, I was like, we should buy another Fiat because it's kind of like a Miata, but it's a little bit weird, so it checks that box for me. And the other option was a CRX, and turns out CRXs are not as cheap as Fiats, so I ended up with the Fiat.
That's very cool. And by the way, I have a Miata.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said that. I don't want to slam anybody that has a Miata.
Oh no, and no offense taken. I'm all for the weird cars. I'll tell you what. Going to some of the autocrosses, I've seen some very odd cars autocrossing. First two that come to mind is a lowered Chevy S10 with a 4-cylinder and a Chevy Citation X11.
Chevy Citation. But the X11, that was a performance package, wasn't it, for the Citation?
It was, well, Malaise era performance. So
Yeah,
it had,
exactly.
90 horsepower?
Still had the Iron Duke in it.
It
Still
did. Iron
not
Puke.
impressive.
No, not at all. Interesting car, though, for sure.
Okay, so we've covered two of the three guys' cars. We got the 240 for Robbie, and Michael, you said you're the one with the Fiat, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so Adam, what do you got?
I have a 1984 Dodge Omni GLH package, which would not be the turbo car that everybody first jumps to. I wish it was sometimes, but my car, basically its entire life, has been a dedicated autocross car. It's not very streetable. It's caged. It's uncomfortable. It follows cracks in the road terribly because it's got a very, very aggressive alignment, but it's pretty quick in its own right, and it's upset more than its fair share of people. So it's interesting, it's fun, but
Checks the weird box again.
yeah,
It's the
I'm in the
unusual
same
one.
boat as Michael. I can't have anything that anybody else would have, or anything normal. So
Plus, beating a Corvette in an Omni is way more fun.
it is hilarious.
Absolutely. I know. I listened to your guys' show where you guys went. Weren't you the ones that went to the Corvette Club autocross?
Yeah, I've
So
been to
everybody-
a couple of them over the last few years, and I do enjoy going to those NCCC events and stuff like that. So,
That's got to be so much fun.
well, you get a bunch of old guys who, like, they were, young when that car was new, and so they, like, their wife had one or something like that, and they're just like, there's no way this thing's fast. I used to have one of those. It burned to the ground when I was, 35 or whatever, and so they take it and they kind of dismiss it, and then they come in 6 seconds slower, and they just like, well, okay, maybe we need to take a second look at this thing.
That's the interesting thing about autocross, right? Because I think a lot of people, because it's an entry-level racing, think that if they just show up with the most ridiculous V8, twin turbo, blah, 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 they can just blow everybody out of the water because your competition is generally Miatas, and you see a lot of Civics, and you see a lot of low-powered cars, and so they're like, there's no real competition here. I'm just going to clean up. This is going to be easy. But autocross it's more nuanced than that for sure. I mean, there's a lot of driver technique that goes into it as well as car setup. And so, people that dismiss autocross as, not being real racing are being way too quick to pass judgment on it, because there are a lot of things that you can do to take a car that on the surface of it doesn't seem very fast and just absolutely clean up at an event.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And the nice thing about autocross too, and you don't think about this, and after I did autocross for a few years, I started to do some track days, and I enjoy track days. They're fun. It's fun to go 120 miles an hour on a straightaway in your daily driver, but the adrenaline and what goes through your system and the way you react isn't the same, and it felt slow to me after doing autocross for a few years, because you got to think about an autocross course is you're setting up let's say 10 laps on a track, and you're squeezing all that energy and all those turns and course corrections in a 60-second time frame where you're doing 20 minutes on a track, and it's just not the same thing. But it's extremely competitive and extremely fun and bang for your buck. I couldn't turn it down.
Yeah, 100%.
What clubs do you guys race with?
We mainly race with SCCA here in central Iowa. We're mainly all in Des Moines. Adam's in a town near Des Moines, or near Ames. So for us, we're in the Des Moines Valley region SCCA. I think my membership is technically Iowa region SCCA, which is eastern Iowa. And that's where I started, because I started doing it when I was in college at Iowa, and I've just kind of stuck with them. But we don't really have, I mean, we have some other clubs too. I guess we've got, specialty clubs like the Corvette Club, the Porsche Club, some things like that. But for the main part, the prevailing club in this area is SCCA.
Every year I have some friends who live in the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area, and they have a club that uses NASA's autocross rules, which are literally just their time trial rules, copy-pasted into a different book and called NASA Cross. And I try and race with them at least once or twice a year. Unfortunately, this year I'm not going to make it to any of their events, but yeah, I race with them pretty regularly. And I think I like their class formatting better, because there's only I think 8 or maybe 9 classes total, whereas in the SCCA there's 50 or 60. And so in the NASA ruling, you're more likely to have another car in your class, where with SCCA, especially as you get into the higher prepared classes, the classes with more mod allowances, there's less and less cars per class. And my Omni, I've never actually raced against another person in my class ever.
Really?
Nope. I've never once been to an event that had another car that was either F Street prepared when I raced in that class, or E prepared where I am now because of my non-DOT slick.
Yeah, that is kind of a struggle, because I'm in D prepared, because I think the only reason I'm in D prepared is because of the camshafts.
The cam.
Yep.
Otherwise, you'd be street prepared because you use a DOT legal tire.
Technically, yeah. So, and that kind of, that's drawback. It's a drawback, or it's a rule that you can finagle with SCCA. To your point, it may get more fairly classed in NASA rules because of how they do their classing. Because as soon as I get thrown into D prepared, which usually isn't a problem except for when I go to Iowa region races, there's a guy that turns up he's got an original Lotus 7.
Oh.
Yeah, which weighs 1,300 pounds, I think is what he told me. So it really doesn't it doesn't matter that it only makes 100 horsepower or 90 horsepower or whatever. It still only weighs 1,300 pounds. And he runs our comps on it too, I think.
Holy cow.
And he also has a 60, it's either a 65 or a 66 original Lotus Elan factory race car, which is also Indy prepared.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's kind of the drawback of the SCCA classing, is that, I could, if I took the cams out, I could go back to street, which is a better class, and in that case, I tend to I can run with the Miatas usually after the packs. I usually kind of line up pretty well with the Miatas. But if I get thrown into D prepared, I get a really, really bad PAX number. Now, SCCA has introduced the Heritage class. Isn't that right, Adam? The Heritage class, which our regions haven't adopted yet, probably because I'm the only one that really wants it. But with the Heritage class, you get a much, much better PAX, and the modifying rules are a lot more lenient, because I think they want to see more guys like me and the guy with the Lotuses and stuff like that. They want to see us come into those events, because a lot of people have those cars, and oftentimes they do get thrown into kind of goofy classes, and it really screws up their PAX numbers. So they're trying to give people incentive that have those older cars to come back and race.
And just to clarify here, when you're talking about PAX numbers, autocross kind of works like golf in the aspect that you have a handicap. So the guy driving the Fiat 124 is also the guy racing the guy in the brand new C7 Z06. He gets a handicap, so at the end of the day, after the numbers are adjusted, everybody should be fairly equal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory,
yeah, no kidding.
And there are ways to, like I said, work those rules too. The cams that I have, it's just me being honest that I run in D prepared, because the cams that I have probably make a very marginal change in my times. Realistically, because they're not even that much different than the stock cams. It's just I'm trying to follow the rules and be honest with my mods. So, if I ran the stock cam or ran in D Street, I'd probably have a reasonably competitive car. But for me, it's not. I'm not trying to come top 10 in packs. I'm just kind of there to have fun. So, I'm Indy prepared. It's not a big deal.
Absolutely. When I had my Mustang, I used to have a 2001 Mustang GT with an automatic transmission. I put full exhaust, shorty headers, X-pipe, high-flow cats, and a cold air intake in it, and that put me into one of the prep classes.
Street prepared.
Yeah, so and even though I was running street tires, and it killed my packs time, and I was never competitive, but it didn't matter. I was out there having fun anyway.
Yeah, that's the same problem I run into. My car is a full street prepared build. At one point, actually, I believe has even won a national championship in street prepared with the previous owner. But I got a bunch of free non-DOT takeoffs, and I can't turn down free tires, and that puts me in prepared. And my PAX number is terrible there because I'm 150 or 200 horse short of what is competitive in that class, and therefore my PAX is terrible. But I just go out there because it's fun, and generally speaking, all I really care about is racing in raw time against my 5 to 8 friends who are there as well, and as long as I'm faster than Michael and Ravi, that's all that I'm really concerned about. So
I'm the same way. One of my good buddies who I actually helped get into autocross a few years back, he for a while I didn't have a car to drive at all, so we would co-drive his 2010 WRX, and we were constantly battling back and forth for time, see who could go fastest through the section, go cleanest, keep from spinning it, because I know he liked to spin the car out a lot. He would push it a little too hard and just about every sweeper that he saw, and we'd end up facing the wrong direction at the end of it, but it was always fun.
You got to know the limits. You don't know how fast your car can go until you've gone too fast.
That's true. If you're not clipping cones, not getting those 2-second penalties, you don't know where the edge of your car is. So
true.
You're going to have that occasionally.
Absolutely. Speaking of clipping cones and penalties, one of the interesting rules with autocross, like we've talked about before, it's kind of hard to explain via audio, but if you watch some of my videos that I'll be posting on YouTube here shortly, it'll be easier to explain. But when you hit a cone and there's the little chalk outline of the cone on the ground, if you hit it and it stays standing up and it's in the box, any part of it at all is in the box, it's no penalty. If you knock it out of the box, knock it over, it's a 2-second penalty added to your time. However, I one time only, and this is 1,000,000 to 1 shot, I should have bought a lottery ticket that day, ran over a cone, just ran it the hell over, kicked it up with the back tire of my Mustang. It kicked up about 6 feet in the air, came up standing up and down, and and about 1/3 of it was still sitting in the box, no penalty.
That's
Boom.
good.
Perfect.
I've seen that happen once in my life.
That's the perfect line then.
Yep, that counts.
You hit the perfect apex right there.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, 6 inches over, whatever. If it was a road course, it would have been rumble strip. I'd have been fine. You guys do any other kind of racing besides autocross?
Well, Michael's
Do a lot
tried.
of
Yes.
bench racing.
We do some bench racing for sure.
That's part of why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I have done a road course event in the Fiat, and I have also taken the Fiat drifting as of recently.
That's awesome. How was that?
It turned out to be actually really good. So I'm an idiot. So I was like, okay, we went to this drifting event, and I was like, this is pretty cool. Like I could see myself doing this. I'm also building an RX-7 that's gonna have a V8. I'm like, I like this. This is kind of cool. People are cool. I want to check this out. So I publicly stated to the world on this show, or on our show and one other show, I'm going to take the Fiat drifting, and I'm in the process of putting I'm putting a welded diff in the car, I'm preparing the car and all this stuff, and I go, this is the stupidest thing that anybody's ever done. I've got a 74 Fiat 124, which is like a vintage race car. This is kind of more, gentleman's race car, leather racing gloves,
It would fit right in at the midi.
Mila Magila type of stuff, and I'm going to take it drifting, and I'm the only person that I can find that's ever done this before, so I have no clue exactly how this is going to work. But I went out there. I got a lot of good feedback from the people at the event, which was cool when we got there, because I thought for sure all those people would think I was the biggest idiot that's ever lived bringing this car out there, but people were cool about it. I got out on track. It turned out that the car, with the welded diff in it and some skinny tires, was able to spin up the rears at speed without too much issue, and had a really good day. I had a guy that was on our show a while back that may have taken the whole trip out there to the track, which is 2 hours away from us, to give me a little tuition, which I'm eternally grateful for. It was awesome.
Wow.
And ended up having a really, really, really cool day. Great experience. The car will drift. It's got some limitations like steering angle and a few other things, but it was a really cool day. It was a great experience.
Yeah, I saw some of those pictures, and I'll tell you what, those are some of the coolest pictures I've ever seen an old Fiat on a track.
Yeah, yeah.
Just, I think 2 days ago, I saw a picture that I had not seen of the Fiat in the grass. I think Michael's kind of been trying to keep on the DL.
No.
Oh,
I
I
said
didn't
for
see
sure I
that
spent
one.
most of the day in the grass. There is no doubt about that.
I do recall you saying that. I do listen to your show, and I do recall you saying you spent more time in the grass than on the asphalt.
Yeah, it's inevitably going to happen. If I have more respect for that, for drifting, than I did even before, and I'll admit that I used to think it was really stupid, and now that I've done it, it takes a lot more car control than even I thought after I'd been out there and done a ride along. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm sure it would be maybe marginally easier in a car that has more power, but as soon as you start adding more power, as I'm told, it starts adding other complications. So you can't just say, if I've got 300 horsepower, that'll solve the problem, or if I throw a supercharger on, that'll fix all my problems. It's very technique heavy, technique based, and it's hard. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, I can agree with you there. I actually did a couple drifting classes way back in the day. I used to work at an auto repair shop, and the owner of the shop once a year would take us, the whole shop, out to Vegas just for the hell of it. And there was a place out there called U-Drift. It's not there anymore. I think the owner is now in prison.
Oh.
I could be wrong, but
Whoops.
I know he was caught embezzling money, and the last post that they had on their Facebook page was about the Infiniti SUV that they were using to pick up people at hotels. It was up for sale at a police auction. It was full of bullet holes, and the engine block had bullets in it. So,
Sketchy
long story
place.
short, you pull up. It was in the parking lot of Las Vegas Speedway, and they had just the most beat-up, hideous-looking 240s in the world. And if you didn't know what was going on, you would have turned and ran, because you would have swore you needed a tetanus shot just from looking at the cars. But they were all 240s, pretty much bone stock. They threw some coilovers, and they took all the exhausts from the header back and straight piped them.
Of course.
And then they went out to a big area. There was a fire hydrant. They surrounded it with some tires. They would spray down an area for training. It was $25 for your training session, where you go with an instructor. It's 25 minutes of drive time, 5 minutes of them screwing around and behind the wheel to show you what it can do. And after that, it was $40 for every half hour on your own in the car. Once you did that one training thing, you got the car for 30 minutes. So my boss had given us all a budget and some corporate credit cards to use for spending money. We all spent about $450 there over 2 days. We spent every day from open to close. We were there just screwing around in the cars. After we did the original lessons, they didn't care, and we were cash paying. We weren't using Groupons. We went to the front of the line. We spent more time in the seats of the car there than standing around watching other people do it. Absolute blast. I wish it would have stayed open. I wish it'd still be around, because bang for a buck, it was the cheapest, most fun thing I've ever done in Vegas.
That is super cheap. That is some
sounds like a good
seriously cheap seat time.
So
Yeah.
Did you feel like you got the hang of it with that much time?
I was getting real good at initiating and carrying and continuing a drift in one direction. Once I started to try to do transitions, that's where I was having problems and I was losing it. And I think if I'd have had another hour in the car and just worked on that instead of screwing around and having fun and doing giant donuts inches away from tires and cones, I would have been able to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Transitioning is hard. And when we were out, so we have the I guess the governing body, I don't know what you call them, the people that hold the event is called O Drift Collective, which is Omaha Drift Collective. So they do that at Raceway Park at the Midlands, or it used to be called MAM, Mid-America Motorplex. And so one of the sections that they did in the afternoon, so the way that they do it is they had two sections on the track where you could drift, and I assume that's probably just for safety and insurance reasons. You can't drift the whole track. Plus, you know, a lot of these guys do this a lot of the time. There were still a ton of people in the grass. I mean, there are guys that weren't necessarily novices that spent quite a bit of time in the grass. If you look back at what we saw at Grid Life, because we went to Grid Life back in June, that was seriously impressive that those guys could drift the whole track, and not much of the time was spent in the grass out there, really, compared to what I saw at O Drift Collective. But so they had the 2 sections of the track that you could drift in the afternoon. They changed one of the sections, and this section you had to go into the first corner. They told me at 80 miles an hour.
Jesus.
So I've never been on this track before. I've never drifted it before, and they're like, "Hey, you got to go into that first corner at 80, and you have to do 2 transitions to get through the section."
Holy cow.
And I'm like, "Geez, it's a good thing I had an instructor with me on that one, because there's no way I would have gone into that corner fast enough." He was just go, 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 go. I'm like, "All right, he seems to know what we're doing, so if we end up hitting a barricade,
yeah,
I'm just gonna trust him. I'm just gonna." And it was fine. It's a pretty safe track, but I hear you. That having to do 2 transitions in a row is hard. I got the one transition I could get, I don't know, 30-50% of the time, and then to try to do that second one, I couldn't connect both of them together and do those 3 separate drifts. It just never happened.
Yeah, the nice thing about what they were doing there is they actually had the area I was at. It was wet. It was all wet down, so you would it wasn't fast. You weren't high speed at all.
Sure.
It was second gear. I mean, and they didn't want you to hit the rev limiter at all. So there was really no need to either, because of the wet. They had welded diffs. It was real slow and nice and easy. You really got to learn the technique. And the most fun I had was they had hydro barriers around the outside of the teardrop shape, and in the center of the bottom of that teardrop was where the hydrant was, and it had a tire barrier all the way around it. It was probably about a 15, maybe 20-foot wide diameter tire barrier, and it's a perfect circle. So what I used to do is they in the hydro barriers, they had those really tall, skinny street cones that stand about 4 foot tall.
Yeah.
They had those stuck through the hydro barrier. So I'd come out way on the outside, I'd pull the e-brake, kick the ass end out, and I'd try and tap all of those cones that were sticking out with the back bumper, and come around and then do another 360 right up with my nose right up against the front tire barrier.
Sounds like fun.
Oh, it's a blast. It really comes down to the technique when you're doing it slow like that, and what you were saying too before about adding horsepower. It's just like autocross or any form of motorsport. All you're going to do by jumping in a car that's too much for you to handle in that situation, you're just going to crash that much faster.
Right.
So kind of got a little sidetracked there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's our show in general. It's just sidetracked after another.
So do you guys, is there any reason you guys like autocross over any other form of motorsports, or is there something else you'd rather be doing?
I think autocross for us is more of a necessity due to proximity. The track that Michael was talking about where he went drifting is the closest track to us by a pretty good margin, and it's still like a 2.5 hour drive. Ooh. And so if you want to do a track day, like say they do what they call Fast Fridays, where they have an open track day on Fridays. Okay. Driver's meeting is at 8 a.m. So you got to be through tech by 8. So you got to be there by like 7 or 7:30, which means you're leaving real early, or you're spending money on a hotel, neither of which we particularly love doing on a regular basis anyway. So autocross, you can get up, you can go to. It's only 15 minutes across town. It's there. It's fun. It's better than sitting in a parking lot looking at cars. At least you get to do something with them. So I think we all aspire to do bigger things, but at our current point in our lives with our budget and whatnot, that this is the easiest thing to do, and it's better than not doing it at all.
Absolutely. And even for those who aren't sure about getting into motorsports at all, going to a parking lot and watch cars losing control, running over cones, spinning out, pushing as hard as they can is a lot more fun than going to a parking lot and looking at a bunch of parked cars.
Yeah, for sure.
So how often do you guys have autocrosses out in Iowa where you guys are at?
We have them pretty regularly, I think, because of what Adam said. There's not – our track options are super limited. We got a lot of traveling that we have to do, and there are a lot of people in Iowa that want to race. So we have in the on-season months, every couple of weeks, sometimes even every weekend, we can find an autocross somewhere in the state.
Like Michael had said earlier, we have 2 semi-local regions. We have DMVR and we have Iowa. And it's really not too far for us, even though we're DMVR technically. It's not very far for us to get to most of the Iowa region races. So if you're willing to drive just a little bit, you can make both sanctioning bodies hold at least 1 race a month. So you can get at least 2 a month in. More often you can do 3 or 4, especially if you're doing like the PCA and the NCCC events. So
okay. Yeah, they do rallycross now too. It's been a newer development for them. So if
that's really, really popular around here.
Yeah, if that's your style, you got a Subaru, they've got those options too.
I'm actually thinking about taking the Miata rallycrossing just for the hell of it.
We keep talking about it. I don't know if anybody has a really good car to do it. I mean, probably the best thing that we've got is Adam's S10, and it's still lowered, so you got that issue. You may rip a front bumper off, but
yeah, if I had the non-extreme package one, I probably wouldn't hesitate at all. But since I have the extreme package, so it has a lower front valance to begin with, and it's 2 inches lower than a normal S10 factory, I just don't.
May not be a good idea.
Yeah, I don't feel like tearing that front bumper off.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Well, my Miata is lowered now, but the car when I bought it came with Koni adjustable coilovers, and it's sitting almost as low as it can possibly sit. So I'm wondering just how high I can lift it up, and if I can get it up to a decent level, I'll probably run it in a rallycross.
There's a dude here that he's got a Miata with a light bar on the front of it, of all things. Not sure why, but
he's like full. He's living that rallycross life.
Yeah, he jacked it up too, didn't he? He's got a little bit of a lift on it or something.
I think now there's somebody who makes lifts for Miatas, because
that's your style.
The rallycross is basically autocross in a field. So I mean, it's not like you're jumping jumps or doing anything too crazy. So.
No, it's relatively flat. I mean, we'd probably be okay, but don't want to take on the daily or something you care about if you're gonna rip a body panel off, of all things.
Like if we lived in Arizona, I'd totally rallycross the S10 because you're not gonna sink. It's just gonna be like
you can sink in sand.
Well, okay, so when I think of that, I think more of like clay than sand.
Like salt flats.
So you guys got any good or funny stories about autocrossing you want to share?
Good or funny stories? Anybody have a story?
Michael's control arm.
Oh yeah,
not too bad.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So when we were out at Marshalltown, again, that little go-kart track, I am not very nice to my Fiat. It's the red mist. Like it descends, and I don't care anymore. And we're going 10/10.
Hence the name of the
podcast. Right. That is kind of me all the time. And so I took it out at Marshalltown, and typically what they do, it's like 0.6 of a mile. I say typical. We don't do it anymore because it got closed down, but it's 0.6 of a mile for 1 lap. They will let us do like 3/4 of a lap as a warm-up because of how you enter the track, and then your time starts, and you do 2 laps. Well, when I was out there on my sighting warm-up lap, so to speak, I heard the front suspension pop, and I just ignored it because the wheel didn't fall off and the car was still rolling generally in a straight direction. So I just kept going. And so I brought the car back in and started looking at it and couldn't figure out what it was. I thought maybe
ran his fastest time he'd ever done in that car, just by the way.
Wow.
And looking at the car, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. I didn't know if a sway bar had come loose because that's kind of what it felt like to me, because it was handling oddly and I couldn't really put my finger on what exactly it was. But finally, my dad still comes out and autocrosses with me. He took the car out, and I was looking at the car from the back, and I could see on the driver's side the front wheel had positive camber instead of negative camber. And I was looking at it, and I said, do not take that car out there. We need to bring this back up to the trailer and look at it again. And when we got it jacked up and started looking at it again, we'd noticed that the bottom control arm had ripped out of the front. Yeah, it had ripped out of the front frame, or the K-member, or whatever you want to call that. It had pulled the bolts through. Hadn't broken the bolts, it had pulled the bolts through.
Holy cow.
At some point in this car's life, just like every Fiat 124 ever, it sat in somebody's backyard or in somebody's field, I can't remember, and we kind of saved it. Or the guy before us attempted to save it and never finished it, and we put it back together. But it's not uncommon for those cars to have chassis rust, so I wasn't that surprised that it had happened. But it's all since been replaced. Basically, that whole front K-member thing has been swapped out with another car that wasn't rusty. It really wasn't that bad. It was just all that, those curbs at Marshalltown were bad. I mean, it was an old track, and they had never done well. I'm sure at some point they had, but the maintenance on the curbs was bad, and they were tall because the track had worn out around them. And when you hit them, it was a pretty good jolt. And I used to run those things over as hard as I could, just having fun. And it eventually took a toll on the chassis. But nobody got hurt. So,
being that it's an Italian car, I suppose you should just be glad it just didn't burst into flames right after that.
It's the world's most reliable Fiat, to be honest. It's been a really.
That's not really saying a whole lot, but that's been pretty good.
This is coming from the guy that had fuel spewing out of his car all over the engine.
But just like you said, the control arm wasn't a failure of the car; it was a failure of the driver. My fuel line was not tightened by the owner with a wrench, and so it fell off.
Oh, yeah.
Not the car's fault, my fault.
I've never actually had any accidents while driving. The worst thing I ever had was I'm sitting in the grid waiting for everybody to go, and I'm driving by myself, so I lean over to adjust my seatbelts on the passenger seat just to kind of get them so they're not flying all over the place. And while doing this, I didn't put my car didn't put it in gear and turn it off or have the brakes set. So as I'm leaning over, my foot comes off the brake, and I start rolling, and I go straight into a fence that's sitting next to the track and just scratch all up the side of my car.
Oh, that's no good.
So it's I think it's 2 feet long, just along the body line. So it actually looks like it kind of somewhat goes with the rest of the car.
Custom
so it's
pinstripe.
as noticeable, but
we're gonna put a big Hoosier sticker. We're gonna get you a
we can just
Hoosier sponsorship contingency, and we're just gonna cover that up. It's gonna be perfectly fine.
Yep. But other than that, I've been pretty uneventful. I've melted a relay for my fans, so that I'm driving going. I feel like I'm running hot, but as I'm leaving the event, I'm going the interstate, and it's just above where it normally is running. Something can't be right. So I pull over, and sure enough, the fans aren't running, and I had melted all the wiring and all the relay itself. And I honestly don't know what I did because all I had to do was rewire, and everything was fine.
One of the very first times that Robbie had ever come and raced with me in Marshalltown, I was trying to still trying to ruin his life at this point. I hadn't quite fully succeeded yet. We were getting ready to depart in a convoy, as we often did at the time, and we stopped at a gas station before we left. Robbie shut his car off, and when he went to turn it back on, nothing. And there is a fuse of some sort, a fusible link, really, because it's not really a normal fuse, for his starter relay or something that popped.
Yep.
Oh.
And this is, 7:30 Saturday morning, and this is not a part that very many cars need, so it's not a part that you're just going to stroll into a parts store and get.
It's a super obscure 75 amp fuse that a handful of Nissans in the 95 era had, and it basically would pop if I accidentally killed it. I think it was something like an anomaly that happened when I swapped the SR20 into it, that if I would kill it, obviously accidentally, it would pop this fuse. So I actually had to order, after this event, just 6 of them. So I always have something on hand in case I accidentally killed it.
Didn't you have an 11-pound flywheel in that car or something crazy like that?
9-pound flywheel.
9-pound flywheel. It wouldn't. You would come to a stop and it would die.
Yep. And it was
clutch in, die.
It was so light that it couldn't keep
any momentum.
And then even with a tuner, we couldn't get it to consistently
die.
Couldn't get it to run smoothly.
But so I adopted the Marine No Man Left Behind for Robbie, and I wasn't going to leave him until we figured out a way to fix it. So all the rest of our friends took off because one of them was going to I gave my money to another friend. I was like, go get me paid, get me in, get me ready. Robbie and I will be there as soon as we can. But I'm going to fix Robbie, or we're going to figure out a way to fix Robbie's car. And we quickly realized that there was no parts store that was going to have this. So we went back to what I was using as a shop at the time, which was a mini warehouse not too far away. And we just got some wire and some plugs. And we just, all right, don't kill it.
Yeah, no kidding.
It'll be fine. So, and it made it to the race. And
I ran that way for a couple of weeks. Until I got more of those.
With no fuse in it?
Yeah.
Just straight wired, straight across.
No man left behind, though.
So it's good
to
to hear.
Be fine.
Yeah, it was fine. I didn't blow up too many things.
It's good to hear you guys aren't like on the Top Gear mentality or methodology where one of your guys is on the side of the road. Okay, see you later, bye.
That would never work for us.
If I was worried about him being faster than I was at the time, I probably would have left him. If this would have been this year and he would have had his car finished and he would have had it ready to go where it's at now, and I'm fairly certain he would have been faster than me, I'd have been like, well, Robbie, good luck with that.
So look at the time. I got to get going.
Sorry, man. I don't want to miss tech.
I gotta be there.
But because I was fairly confident I could beat him, because I had a better prepared car at the point.
Yeah,
at
that time for sure. Cause was I still in Ames at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had street tires, stock
all
suspension.
Seasons,
Yeah,
stock suspension.
I wasn't beating
diff.
anybody with that.
I was like, yeah, I got this. So we got to save Robbie so that I can gloat. It was more. I'll be honest. It was still for me.
I think that day when I broke the control arm, broke the frame, and you had the fuel issue. I think that was
the
same
day.
And then our buddy Chaz, his Miata, it smelled like it caught on fire, but it was a relay too, I think. But we were like, what the hell is that smell? Why
we had half the dash tore out of that car.
Right, we're like looking at stuff. We're like, what the hell is going on here? Okay, let's see if we can try to get this home. So my car failed. Chaz's car smelled like it caught on fire. We go to leave. Adam's car shooting fuel all over the driveway. So I think
lady's Mustang almost started on fire. I thought I was finally going to get to use my fire extinguisher.
Yep.
By the time we got there, the fire was out.
I don't think that was the one where the Camaro airbag went off. I think that was a different one.
That was a different one because I was there for that.
You were at that one.
Okay.
I missed the control arm.
But yeah, if we had the Top Gear mentality for teamwork, we would just not show up to any event because none of us would get there, or we'd all get stuck there and have to walk home.
So, what are some good tips you can give to people who want to get into autocross?
Just do it.
Yeah, I would say show up.
I know every time I talk to somebody about going and autocrossing, they'll, oh yeah, I've thought about it. I'm not sure that my car's really right for it or anything like that. And the first thing I tell them is, mildly jokingly, I've never met a car that wouldn't autocross.
I can agree with that.
Just get out there and do it. Don't be ashamed if you come in slower than somebody else in the same car that you have, or you're in a Subaru and you got beat by a Prius. There's no shame in that. The fact that you're there and doing it makes you better than the person who's sitting at the couch on his couch thinking about it.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a guy out on the East Coast who just won regional championship in his class in a Prius.
H-stock, baby. That's impressive considering.
We had a dude.
Fiesta ST is.
We had a dude. What did he say? He used to have like a 335i or something like that.
I think he had a turboed E30.
Damn. So he went the reasonable route and got a Prius for a daily.
I think that there was like quite a few years in between turbo E30 and now I have a Prius, but I still miss racing. I'm coming back.
So he came back and what did he beat that day? He beat some stuff that like there's no way in hell you would have thought he could have beat.
He was not that far behind me in the Miata of a friend of ours that we were racing.
I feel like he beat a couple MR2s also.
He beat that Miata.
Yeah.
He was solid mid-pack packs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Raw.
Yeah, in just a stock Prius.
Like 400 tread wear tires.
Yeah, he didn't even have good tires or anything. So, yeah, just show up. I mean, really, just show up. Ask for help. That's a big one. I'm sure our regions are indicative of other regions. They want people to show up to their events. They want new members to come to their events. So they're usually very supportive of people that show up and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I would like some help. So if you can swallow your pride and ask questions and ask for help, I can guarantee you that somebody there will take the time to help you, whether that be, you riding with them to get an idea of, how to navigate through the cones, or them riding with you so that they can kind of point you through or give you tips afterwards. And I know some regions, it seems like it's few and far between, but Iowa region has done it. They'll have an autocross school, which is really cool. And if they still did it, I think I would still go, because you get in with some people that have some seniority in your group, and they can point out stuff to you that you don't even realize that you're doing. Like you're crossing your hands, or you're shuffling the wheel. I can see that you're not looking through the cones correctly. You're not looking far enough ahead. Stuff that ingrained things that you're doing that you may not even be realizing that you're doing, whether you be a novice or someone that's more moderate to advanced. If you see an autocross school, definitely sign up for that, because those are really cool experiences.
Yeah, I know the Chicago region here, the Chicago SCCA region, they do one every April. In fact, it's been 4 or 5 years now, but I was an instructor at one point in time at the autocross school that they did. I did it myself before that. It's an absolute blast. It's 2 days for the Chicago region. It's 2 full days. You get Saturday and Sunday. with instruction and an autocross. It's an absolute blast, and you will learn so much so fast. It's absolutely worth it.
Sounds like I need to come to Chicago next year.
I really wish our region still did it, because I think ours was 2 days, or it was 1 day and then the next day there was just a normal autocross and they reversed the course or something like that. But it was only like $50 or something, and you got way more seat time and seat time with an instructor than you ever would have gotten in a normal autocross. It was awesome. I mean, I really wish they did that annually, because I would still go. Even if you do it a lot and you're really advanced, there's something that you're doing that's not perfect. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect at this. That's why people continue to do it, so you can continue to get better and better. And it was cool when I could sit in and, they could give me a little bit of tuition on something that I wasn't doing great. And this was in the first couple of years I was doing it, so there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't doing so well. So highly recommend the schools if you can find them.
Well, yeah, if you guys want to come out, it'll be in April. It's a little more than $50. I want to say it's $100 for the both days, but you do get lunches. And if you're sticking around, the way they usually do it in Chicago region is, I think it's $100. At least it was when I did it, and I think the last time when I was an instructor it was $100. They did bring in lunch both days, if I remember right. But the cool thing was, they did the autocross Saturday. They split the track into 2 different courses, so you're working 2 separate courses that day. Sunday, they combined them to make one big course, and if you stuck around and you're in the Chicago region, the very next weekend is the same autocross course they did that Sunday at school. They do that for the first race of the season.
That's pretty cool. I mean, for $100, I mean, taking into account too your fuel and your wear and tear and all that stuff, it's still really hard to beat that value, because really the cheapest, I mean, I guess I've seen some track days that might be $100, but even if you go to a track day, oftentimes you're traveling and then you've got wear and tear on your vehicle, tires, brakes, the fuel. I mean, it's still really good value when compared to even the next step up as far as racing and air quotes goes.
Well, and even look at this, you do $100 for a 1 day track day event, you're going to get 40 to 60 minutes of seat time. With this, it's almost all seat time. I mean, you're going back and forth, but it's lap after lap after lap. They're not breaking down in between classes and breaking things up. Half the day you're working the course, the other half of the day you're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so worth it. And when I was the instructor, I had 2 students. One was in a little V6 Mustang, and the other was my buddy in the WRX. Both times I was able to do 1 lap in each of their cars. They allowed me to do it to show them just how fast their cars could go. And it helped them both improve, but it didn't affect their seat time at all more than, it was a Saturday, so it was 30 seconds. They lost 30 seconds of seat time for somebody else to get in their car and show them how to do it.
That's actually one of the things I was going to say you should do. Is a lot of regions have what they call fun runs afterwards, especially if things go smoothly and you're done at a relatively decent time. Find somebody who's in a car that's similar to yours, at least the same drivetrain configuration, and that's fast. Have them drive your car while you sit in the passenger seat and see what they're doing differently than you. I've tried. Unfortunately, our region doesn't have a lot of fast front-wheel drive guys, so it's been difficult for me to find that person. But I have tried, and I have had a few people drive it, and I have learned from that. So
even if you can't we don't do a whole lot of fun runs here. We have so many people coming to the events. It's, at least with the SCCA, there really isn't time for fun runs anymore. So even if you give up 1 run out of your day, the amount of stuff you're going to learn from that 60 seconds, that 1 run you're going to lose, especially when you're early on in doing this and still learning, the amount of what you're going to learn is going to far surpass that 60 seconds of sitting behind the wheel.
Oh yeah.
So a little change of the subject here. So what got you guys together for the podcast?
In my last career, I was doing a lot of flying internationally. And so I spent a lot of time sitting on a plane, and I can't sleep on planes, especially in coach, because you're like snuggled up with a bunch of people that you don't like or want to talk to. So Adam hates sitting next to people. We were just talking about how much he hates public transport. Basically, being on a plane internationally, or anywhere really, is public transport, because you are smashed against a bunch of people. So I could never get comfortable enough to sleep. So I would sit and listen to podcasts, because at least when I was flying, there wasn't any Wi-Fi, so you could bring movies with you, I guess, on your iPad, but I didn't want to carry all that crap with me, so I just had my phone and I would listen to my podcast. Well, a big one for me, at least that got me into podcasts, was Chris Harris on Joe Rogan. And actually, I originally watched that on YouTube, and then I kind of got into Joe Rogan and started listening to him a lot. And kind of through that, I was like, this podcasting thing in reality is not overly complicated. It's not as complicated as trying to do video production or anything like that. And I've got an audio background from when I was in high school. I did a lot of stuff with sound systems and guitars and stuff like that. And I'm like, I think I could put this together. And so I was talking to Adam a lot about it. We were going back and forth. We kind of talked like, yeah, we should do a podcast. Okay, great. And then we'd talk about something else and kind of come back to like, yeah, we should do a podcast. And then finally, we just said, screw it. Let's just do a podcast. We keep talking about it. Let's nail it down and just do it. And because both Adam and I are of the weird variety of cars, we tend to like really, really weird things. We decided that no one would actually want to listen to that podcast unless there was some balance to it. So then we started talking to Robbie because he was doing a lot with Autocross as well, and Robbie was 100% in on that. So one weekend we just grabbed some equipment that I had literally in my basement and put it together, and we kind of assumed we were going to do like 5 shows or something.
Yeah, we figured we'd do a few shows before we caught our rhythm and actually were able to even put together coherent topics.
Because my biggest issue was I thought for sure we would just, like, there would just be dead air. We would just stop.
Yeah, we'd get 10 minutes of talking and then
well, what are we going to do now? So we were concerned about that, and we didn't want to do a bunch of post-production. But we sat down, and that first episode is literally the first episode of the podcast on iTunes. It's, I don't know, it was an hour and 40 or something.
It was like a marathon podcast.
We just random. We had no notes. We had
we were watching
no preparation.
The Daytona 24-hour race. And so if you sit there and you listen to us, we actually there'll be a crash. It'll be like, oh, just out of nowhere. But I've gone back and listened to it even after being, I don't know, what are we, almost 40 episodes
30, yeah,
in
this
now?
One we just did today is 37.
A little over 6 months of this. And and it's still one of my favorite episodes we've done. It's still, especially after I've listened to some other big shows, first ones like the Smoking Tire. You listen to theirs, and it's kind of a shit show, and ours is actually not too bad.
Yeah, so we made
humble brag.
Yeah, we did. Well, we did the one episode, and we just said, "Screw it, let's just put it out there." And Robbie did a lot of our media stuff. He set up our Instagram and got us a logo and a few other things, the stuff to make us legit. And then we kind of went through the whole process of putting it on iTunes, and we just committed to doing it once a week, and we basically stuck to that, other than one technical difficulty. And we've actually put out more shows than that. We haven't been doing this for 37 weeks. We've been doing it for less than that. So, but we just keep hammering away at it, and it seems to be going well.
Well, I'm enjoying it. I subscribed. I listened to you guys fairly early on. I haven't listened to your first episode yet. Now I'm going to go back and listen to it. But
it sounds different, but it's not bad. It sounds different.
Michael has definitely changed the way he finalizes our audio, and so there is a little bit of a different feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as crystal clear or anything like that, but we don't have any structure. Now we try and kind of have some topics, and we do our news subjects at the end, and coming into it, we know what we're going to talk about to some extent. It's definitely not scripted by any stretch, but that was literally just us sitting down and winging it.
Well, you're always going to go through some teething stuff. I can attest to that for sure. I haven't said anything about this on the show yet, but this is actually the second time we're doing this interview because I'm a moron and I screwed it up.
And it happens. I mean, I like podcasting because it's imperfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It should be like a radio show.
It should be like a radio show.
Maybe do some real minor post-editing and put it out there for the world.
And stuff happens too, the whole issue with the first go-round we did on this was Skype. I mean, that's nobody's fault. So you're going to have, if you're using Skype to do interviews, unless you have perfect internet and the recipient has perfect internet and Skype isn't screwing up, there's an extremely low probability that those 3 things are happening in congruity. You may have to do some post-editing. And, occasionally you're going to get you may just totally faux pas and drop your notes and screw something up. But we try to stick to the idea that we want to do very little post-editing in between. We do our bit at the front with our music. We do our bit at the end. We do, an outtake at the end. And then we try to not touch anything in the middle. And just have it be what it is. It's just a conversation among friends.
If you listen, you guys who've listened to my show, you're still going to catch the ums and uhs every now and then from me. I do cut out the ones that are very easy to cut out, but other than that,
Sure.
It's very fluid. And I tell my guests, the people I've had on, like when I had Finch on, I'm like, you know what? He told me, I sent him the list of questions, and he said, I'm probably going to ramble on some of these questions. I told him, go right ahead. This is free form. Let it go. Say what you want to say how you're going to say it. There's no need to worry about swearing or anything like that. If you drop an F-bomb, it's not a big deal. Go for it. Have fun. We're just here to talk. That's basically all it is, and get the story out and help people get involved in motorsports. That's all there really is to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the most fun thing you guys have done in the podcast so far?
Grid life.
Yeah, Grid Life.
Grid Life. I would assume if you're listening to this, you probably are at least somewhat aware of Grid Life because it's kind of exploded, especially in the last couple of months. But we went to the one at Gingerman Raceway in Michigan earlier this year, and we were lucky enough to be able to record a few shows on site. One of them with just us, and then 2 interviews as well with some people we met. Literally while we were there, we were just walking around like, hey, how are you? Shaking hands, kissing babies, that sort of thing. And we conned a few people into being on the show. And that weekend, we still keep coming back to, and it was one of the highlights of my entire life, especially automotive related. It was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Agree.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of that whole weekend for you guys because I saw it was coming up and I had something going on. I think I was actually in a wedding that weekend, so there was no way in hell I was getting out of that to go to a racetrack in Michigan. So I ended up missing out on it this year. I do plan on going next year. Hopefully I can reach out to some of those people that we both know that are involved with Grid Life and possibly set something up for myself here too.
Giant party podcast with like 6 podcasts all in one.
Yeah, and there's going to be it's kind of turning into the podcast place
Event.
It's
Yeah,
kind
of the year.
weird.
Yeah, well, last time we talked, didn't one of you guys say somebody gave Matt Farah a beer?
Yeah, Robbie gave Matt Farah a beer.
Yeah, we were standing around talking to like Adam Jabay and Austin Cabot, and
No, we were just standing there next to the track. There was nobody else out there. We're sitting there, and you've got that 30 rack of.
there was not 30. There was
What was it?
You bought a 24.
No, it was just a 12-pack
Was
of
it?
Busch Light.
Ah.
it was supposed to be just for me and you. So
I like 30 better. 30
Yeah,
sounds
30
way
rack is a
better.
way better story.
yeah, because I'm a man. It was
It was at least 30 beers.
We're going to say it's a 30 rack
and
and Natty Light. That's all.
Yeah,
We'll
30
stick with
pack
that.
of Natty Light. So we're just standing there, like, after the track goes cold, you can just drink wherever you want to. So we were just standing next to the track, drinking right by the tower. Then all of a sudden, this BMW M2 pulls up, and it's Matt Farah
Damn.
with our buddy from Slip Angle,
yeah.
Adam Jabay, in the passenger seat. And it's just like, hey, Matt Farah's just like any other dude. We just go up and start talking to him. But then, yeah, go ahead, tell the story.
Yeah, so we're
Robbie.
just standing there talking, and then he looks over. You can tell he's eyeing my beer. He goes, "Can I buy one of them?" No, just you have one.
No, sir. Your money is no good here, Matt Farah.
You are Matt Farah. You are above me today.
You take this beer.
That's
So
awesome.
I gave him 2 beers.
That's awesome. And I heard Jabay sold his Chump Car Lemons car.
Yeah, he went and promised us a race and then sold it out from underneath us. I don't really know what's going on there, but
It was a hell of a deal, though. I mean, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. It was a crazy deal.
Well,
his response when I talked to him about it was, "I own more than one track car."
Oh, really?
you
That's
go.
what he said?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think that was don't worry about it. If you really want to go lemons racing, we can still make something happen.
He proposed something else to me that I won't share on air until he's okay with it. But I assure you that we will get track time next year in somebody else's car. I'll put it that way.
Nice.
Well, I'm trying. Maybe I should use this whole forum and medium to set up an all podcast Chump Car team. That's what I'm building my car for, after all.
That's perfect.
I mean, that seems to be the direction this is headed. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know I could probably get a hold of Ike from Untitled Car Show, Team Clear Coat out in Denver. If they're
God.
willing to come out, they could probably come out. You guys, and Jabay's right down the road from
Actually
me, from what I
tentatively
understand.
planned on their trip to Road America. They will be driving through Des Moines, and if schedules align, we're gonna eat.
Hopefully
with,
we can get connected with them.
Grab a bite to eat with them.
I don't know if we'll be able to do a
through.
show because I think they'll be.
I think they'll be running too quickly, but it would be fun to sit down and just talk to them. So
It's one of those things when you're in podcasting, we've noticed other people that do podcasts are like automatically your friends. Like you're just, I call them podcast friends because they're a podcast, we're a podcast, so now we're friends. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
we really should move closer to Chicago because you've got Road America, you've got Gingerman's about the same distance.
Audubon Country Club,
which is right there. And isn't Blackhawk not that far away, too?
Blackhawk's out by Rockford. It's not a far jump at all. In fact, it probably wouldn't be that bad for you guys either.
It's still, Mam is still closest, but it's the second, I think, closest.
Yeah, it's just north of like the Rockford area.
But yeah, that's about it for us.
Yeah.
Without putting a serious travel time into it.
No,
it's almost 6 hours to Audubon for us.
Oh yeah, no, it's not that bad. So yeah, we got Audubon, Gingerman, Blackhawk, Road America.
Is that too far away from you?
Isn't that bad. The guy whose car I crew on, he goes there almost every year with the majors when they go up there. What else? Oh, the SCCA Autocross runs in the pit area at the Route 66 drag strip.
Interesting.
So I mean, there's tons of stuff going on around here and plenty of tracks all within a close distance, and I'd be doing a lot more track time if I had the money to afford it. So you guys got any plans for future things to do with the podcast at all?
Most of the time we're just trying to figure out what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah. We want to make sure the podcast stays good.
Oh, absolutely.
Not get late. So,
but we've got a few interviews that we've kind of reached out to people and briefly talked about that we kind of need to close the doors on. Being that the winter is coming, there's not a whole lot of huge plans for what we want to do until next summer, and even then we've kind of given up on trying to plan that far in advance because who knows what's going to happen, especially with the reliability of any of our cars at this point. So we don't have anything huge. Really?
I think we've agreed we need to do more features and more web content. So I'm going to take an honest stab at trying to be a better photographer.
Not that he's a bad photographer as it stands, because people are always asking him for copies of his photos and stuff. So.
Yeah, I don't shoot. It's weird. I don't shoot things standing still very well. I'm not good at it. Things that are moving, I feel like there's a cheater way to make it look good, and maybe it's just a technique that I've picked up easily, and maybe other people struggle with it. But shooting cars that are standing still for me is really hard. It's just a hard subject matter to shoot, in my opinion. So I'm going to make an honest effort at trying to be better at that, and then probably do more web content because we get good traffic out of Car Throttle. I mean, if I don't know if your listeners know much about Car Throttle, but it's an online social media community for people with cars. There's a lot of different things on there. You can post your own car, content about cars, articles. It's kind of a blog format in some ways, and
people can basically give you a like for all your articles, and Car Throttle actually keeps track of what you have, and we're up over 22, almost 2,300 upvotes is what they call them.
Yeah,
and we're pushing 100 followers on there, which people don't have to follow you to see your content. They only follow you if they usually they'll only follow you if they consistently like the things you're posting or are interested in what you are doing. So the fact that we have 100 people on there, that's well above the average person. So I think we're doing well there, and it's interesting.
Yeah, so we need to do more content for that, and more content in general, more stuff on our website, and the form that may take. I don't know if we're 100% sure on what that's going to be yet, but car features, videos of Robbie cutting his bumpers off his 240 so he can go drifting.
Watching me have a nervous breakdown. Whatever.
Yeah, giving Robbie beers so that he can stand in the corner
attack.
and yeah.
I'll send you some zip ties. You can do the zip ties drift stitch.
Perfect.
Yeah, there'll be plenty. Don't worry.
So we just want to do more stuff. We want to make sure the podcast stays really good, but we want to do maybe some different forms of content that people have said that they've liked when we've done them in the past.
We want to pretend that we're legitimate automotive journalists.
We're an automotive journalist, and we do this for a career. So
I think we're trying to stay open to like different types of events and things to do. So if something exciting comes up or something unique comes across our way, we're going to try to go to it and just put it out there to maybe someone that hasn't seen it. Like we mentioned earlier, we'll do anything from a tractor pull to drag racing to autocross to anything in between.
Yeah, people know us as an autocross group because that's what we've done ourselves. But we want to be kind of a car culture group. We want
For
to
sure.
show anything that has an engine and wheels. We are generally interested in it, especially given our background in cars is so varied. And so we kind of want to just cover anything and everything we can that is interesting.
Yeah, boats, airplanes, we'll do that stuff too.
That's awesome, guys. I guess we're kind of kindred spirits because I'm right on there. I'm right on the same page with you guys on that. So you guys want to plug the show, the any other pages or anything else you guys got?
For sure. We've got 1010s Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. We're at the number 1010s Podcast on Twitter because you are limited to the number of characters you can have in your handle. We are on 1010spodcast.com. We've got basically all of our content is on there at some level.
Yep, there's episodes on there, pages for each episode with notes, pictures, links to the news articles for the last probably 10 or so episodes. There's player. You can just listen to them right on the website if you're at work. They will link you to all of our social media. You can get to our store. You can see some of Michael's crowning achievements on photography. Everything's on the website.
Yep, we also have a YouTube channel, which is right at this moment. It's just basically slideshows of our show. So every week we'll put our show up and tries to release about the same time as our podcast. So if you are, like for me, I don't want to use my data at work and I don't have access to our own website or any other podcast website. So YouTube is my only outlet for listening to things at work. So I try to put pictures with what we're talking about. So if you're sitting there listening, you can pull the screen up and go, oh, that's what that car looks like, and then minimize it again if you want to go back to doing what you're doing.
When Michael and I go off on a
Audi
tangent
yeah.
about the most obscure car you've ever heard of in your life, instead of Googling it, Robbie's done the Googling for you because he already had to figure out what the hell we were talking about.
Or
and
if
he'll
it-
put a picture of it.
Or if it's so obscure and they go a bunch of different rabbit trails, I'll just put the Audi logo.
He doesn't even bother
I've done that
anymore.
once because it was getting so picture heavy. I was not going to try to find every little weird engine you were talking about at that
I know
time.
exactly which one he's talking about.
And then we also have a 1010spodcast.com. You click on the store. We have everything from shirts, tank tops, pillows,
Hoodies,
mugs for your coffee.
mugs.
So be sure to check all that out if you like what we're doing. Try to support us.
And we're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, basically everything.
Basically, we're whores. So if there's a social
Yeah.
media that exists, we're on it. If there's a place you can listen to podcasts, we're doing it, and you can buy our stuff.
This is the longest plug ever.
It is the longest plug ever. It's like an ad. It's like a 90-second long ad for 1010's Podcast.
That's all right, guys. I really do appreciate you guys coming on, and I want you guys to get some support from me, too. I know I'm still kind of early on in the game here, but hopefully when I get some more listeners here myself, I'm definitely going to be sending them your way. I listen to your show every week. I absolutely love it. It really helps the daily grind because I spend a lot of time in the car for work. It really helps that time go by a lot easier.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's all we can hope for.
Well, thanks again, guys, for coming on. I do appreciate it. If you've, we'll have to. I'll say goodbye to you guys off the air here real quick, and I'll just go ahead and end this. I'll be right back for my listeners to say goodbye. All right. Thanks again to Robbie, Adam, and Michael from the 1010s Podcast for coming on tonight. I really do appreciate it. It was such a great time listening to them, sharing some stories. Please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes to my show and their show. Their show is absolutely great. I do listen to it every week. I've been subscribed for a long time. You can also find me at Facebook, www.facebook.com/rags2races. Or you can find me on Twitter at rags2races, on Instagram at rags2races, and I'm also starting blogging now. I'll be on Opposite Lock, Rags to Races, And look out, because I'm setting up a YouTube channel, and we'll hopefully be getting some videos out to you soon. And we'll hopefully be adding the podcast there. For those of you who are stuck to listening to podcasts on YouTube, I'm hoping to add that so everybody can enjoy. Please, if you do enjoy the show, share with a friend. Let them know. I will do everything I can to help them get involved in motorsports as well. If you do have any questions, by all means, email me at ragstoraces@gmail.com. Keep the shiny side up, the greasy side down, and remember, there are no strangers in motorsports, only friends you haven't met.